Hi Silem stars, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here and you haven't seen my face before, you haven't watched any of my videos, please subscribe down below. It's free and it really helps my channel grow. In today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a princess bustier with a keyhole yoke. So without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
So the first thing I'm doing is I'm drawing my baseline at the top here. Now after drawing the baseline, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our bust point and under bust measurements. So the bust point is the distance from the shoulder to the nipple, and the under bust is the distance from the shoulder to under the bust. So from the baseline here, the bust point is 12 inches. I'm going to mark that, and the under bust is 16 inches. Now for my half length, I'm going to use 19 inches. So I have about an extra half inch here. I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? So by the time I transfer it, if it's too long, I can always trim it off. So I'll just mark the same thing here so I can get a straight line. Now I'm also going to go ahead and mark the armhole line. So from the shoulder, I'm going to take 8 inches for the armhole. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and divide the shoulder measurement by 2. So the shoulder measurement is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that's what I'm marking at the baseline at the top here. I'll just add half inch allowance to that. So that is going to give me a total of 7.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that same 7.5 inches on the armhole line. Then I'm going to draw a straight line to connect this point to this point. So I'm just going to go ahead now and mark my neckline. So for the width of my neckline, I'm taking 3 inches, and the depth I'm also taking 3 inches. So just decide the neckline you want to use and just go ahead and put it at this point. So I'm using 3 by 3, 3 inches width by 3 inches depth. I'll just draw a curve now to connect those 2 points. From the baseline, I'll just go down by 1 inch to create my shoulder slope. So 1 inch downwards, and then I'm going to connect this point to the neckline here. Now I'm going to divide the client's bust circumference by 4. Her bust circumference is 40 divided by 4, that's 10 inches. I'm just marking that on the armhole line, just marking that right here. Now I'm going to get the midpoint of this line here. So from this point to this point, so this line here, I'm going to get the midpoint. So I'll simply just place my tape and then fold it in half, okay? Now at this point here, I'm going to go inward by 0.5 inches, okay? So half an inch, go in by half an inch. So this is the point here. Now I'm going to connect this point to this point and this point to this point here. So now we're going to move on to the actual drafting of our princess bustier. We've been able to put in the neckline and the armhole. So now we're going to move on to the actual princess bustier drafting. So the nipple to nipple measurement of my client is 8 inches divided by 2. That'll give me 4 inches. So I'm just marking 4 inches from the fold. So this right here is the fold, okay? This is the fold. Although my paper is not folded, but I'm going to cut this part on fold. So this part is the part that is supposed to be on fold. So I'll just mark it here. This is 4 inches. I'll mark the same thing all the way to the armhole. Now draw a straight line to connect all 4 points. Now the next thing I'll do is to get the midpoint of this shoulder slope here. So this line here, I'll get the midpoint. So what I have here is 4.5. I'll just fold my tape to get the midpoint. This is the midpoint right here. So I'll connect this midpoint now to this dot line. So on this half length line now, I'll go out on both sides of this dot line by 1 inch. So 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on the other side. But on this under bust line here, I'll go out on both sides of the line of this dot line by 1.5 inches. Now connect this point to this point and this point to this point. Now on the bust point line here, I'll come down by 1 inch. I also go up by 1 inch. Now this would actually prevent that pointy effect. Sometimes you see a princess that bustier and the bust area looks very pointy and very sharp. It's not supposed to be so. It's supposed to be really nice and curved. So doing this would actually remove that pointy effect. So just go up by 1 inch, come down by 1 inch. Now draw a curve from this point to this point and this point to this point. Now make sure to just curve out this edge here. Okay, you don't want any pointy parts. Everywhere should be curved nicely. So I'm just going to go up from this armhole line by an extra 1 inch. Okay, extra 1 inch. So this is about 7 inches from the shoulder. Now where we have this point here, I'm going to go out on both sides of this line by 1 inch. So 1 inch on this side here, 1 inch on this side here. So now we're going to create a curve from this point to this 1 inch mark we went above the bust point, and we'll connect this point to that same point. Now you want to decide how low your sweetheart neckline is going to be. So from the shoulder, I'm just going to take 8.5 inches. I wanted to take 9 inches, but I feel like it's going to be too revealing. So I'm just going to take 8.5 inches. Just bear in mind that from 8 inches, the person's bust and cleavage begins to show. Then I'll just draw a curve from this point to meet that point to create the sweetheart neckline. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we've already marked the bust circumference divided by 4, and that's what we marked here. So now I'm just going to draw a curve from here to this point. Now what we have to do now is mark our horizontal body measurements. So I've already gone ahead to mark the bust circumference divided by 4 like I told you. So I'm going to measure this dart we have here. What we have here is about 2 inches. So I'm going to add that same 2 inches back here. So replace that dart here. And then my allowance for sewing is about 1.5 inches. So that's what I'm just marking here, 1.5 inches. Now for this half length line, I'm going to divide the round under bust measurements by 4. I'm going to place it right here. Mark that point. Okay. Now I'm going to take this dart here and not this dart here when I'm replacing at this point. Okay, so what I have here is 3 inches. Okay, so it's 3 inches. I'm going to mark here now, so 3 inches here, and then I'm going to add my normal 1.5 inches allowance to that. Now I'm just going to connect these 2 points together. That's it for the front. If you're going to use just the bustier part, maybe you want to make an off-shoulder bustier, you can use just this part, or you want to make a tube bustier, you can also use this part. But if you're going to use the yoke, then you have to connect these 2 parts together. Okay, so this is the yoke right here. You can obviously use the yoke. This is the side front and this is the center front. We're going to cut this on fold. You cut this times 2 and then you cut this on fold. So for the keyhole neckline, we're just going to use this dart now to create the keyhole neckline. So we're going to go down from the neckline by 2.5 inches. So this is the 2.5 inch point here. And then we're going to connect this now to this dart line right here. Actually guys, I'm just going to make it 2 inches. So from this point here, I'll take 2 inches down. So this is it. Okay, so we're going to cut out this part here to create our keyhole neckline. So for the back piece, it's actually much easier to draft. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our baseline. And after marking a baseline, we'll go ahead and mark our vertical measurements. So from the baseline, we'll mark the armhole line, which is 8 inches, bust point, which is 12 inches, under bust, which is 16 inches. The half length is still about 19 and a half, and I'm okay with that. Now, since this is the back piece, we're going to start with marking our zipper allowance. I'm taking 1.5 inches from the edge of the paper, so 1.5 inches all the way down. Now we'll go ahead and create our yoke. I'm just marking 3 inches for the width of the neck, which is the same with the front neckline. But for the depth, I'm marking 2 inches downwards. And I'll just draw a curve to connect this point with this point, and then a straight line from here to here. The shoulder is 14 inches divided by 2, that's 7 inches. So I'm marking this shoulder now from this zip allowance line and not from the edge, okay? Then I'm going to add the same half inch I added for the front piece as well. Now that same 7.5 inches, I'm just going to mark it on the armhole line. Then we'll connect from here to here. Now from this baseline, we're just going to go down by 1 inch so we can get our shoulder slope. So I'm just connecting this point now all the way up to the baseline here. Now I want to get the midpoint of this. So this is 7 inches. The midpoint of that is 3.5 inches. So that's this point here. We'll divide the bust circumference by 4. The bust circumference is 40 inches. Divided by 4, that will give us 10 inches. So that's what I'm marking right here. Now remember that for the front piece, when we got this midpoint, we went in by 0.5 inches for the front. Now for the back, we're not going to go in by 0.5 inches. We're going to leave it like this and just connect this point to this point and all the way up here, okay? So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark our nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches divided by 2, that's 4 inches. So mark that 4 inches at the half length line here. We'll also mark it on the under bust line, on the bust point line. So we'll just create a straight line to connect those 3 points. At the half length line, we'll go in on both sides of that line by ½ inch. So ½ inch on both sides. Now connect these points to this point here, this point to this point. We're also going to mark between 4 inches on the armhole line as well. Just connect that all the way up. So we've already marked our bust circumference divided by 4, so which is what we have here. Now just add my normal 1.5 inches allowance. You know that there's no dart here, so we don't need to replace any dart here. We'll just add the normal 1.5 inches allowance. Then for this half length line, we'll divide the round under bust by 4. Mark that point. Our dart here is 1 inch, so we'll just replace that 1 inch here. And then we'll add 1.5 inches as well. Now we can now connect those points together. So now I'm just going to go down by ½ inch from the armhole line, just so that the back is not straight. Okay, we don't want the back to be straight. We want the back neckline to be a bit slanted. Okay, so that's what we have here. Now this is your side back, and we're going to cut this times 2, and this is our center back. We're also going to cut this times 2. So the yoke as well is going to be cut times 2. Now in order to take out the zipper bulge, okay, we're just going to go in from this edge here by ½ inch. Okay, so ½ inch from the edge, we're going to go in, and then we're going to connect this point all the way to this point here. Now for my yoke, I don't want the zipper to get all the way up here, so I'm just going to connect this point on my neckline all the way to this point here. Okay, another thing I like to do is I like to just indicate that these 2 pieces are going to be joined together along here. So I like to create an arrow here to show that these 2 are joined on this side, and then I also like to create an arrow to show that this is the top. Okay. And this is what the back piece looks like once we're done. So you can see the two back pieces here and the yoke. We're going to cut two pieces of this, two pieces of this, and two pieces of this as well.